What if I told you that in the 1950s, the United States had a top-secret plan to build a single bomb, a bomb so powerful it could wipe out human civilization in a single flash? This isn't some comic book plot. This was Project Sundial, and it was very, very real. So let's just dive right into the sheer, mind-bending scale of this thing. Project Sundial wasn't just another weapon. No, it was designed to be the final word in warfare. The one bomb to make every other bomb totally obsolete. So how powerful are we talking? Well, the plan called for a weapon with the energy of 10 billion tons of TNT. That's a number so big, our brains can't really even process it. It's just a number. So let's try to put it in perspective. Okay, get this. Think of every single bomb, every grenade, every shell fired by every army for the entire 6 years of World War II. Now multiply all that destructive power by 3,000. That's what we're talking about in one single device.
Here's another way to wrap your head around it, and it's just as wild. Imagine you could drop the bomb that leveled Hiroshima. Now, imagine doing that again, 1 minute later. And again, the minute after that, you'd have to keep that up 24/7 for over 15 months just to equal the power of this one bomb.
Right? It just leads you to the most obvious question in the world. How? How could anyone, anywhere, think that building a literal world destroyer was a good idea? What was going on that made this seem like a logical step?
Well, to even begin to answer that, we've got to go back to 1945. The world was just different then. It was reeling from changes and a level of terror that's kind of hard for us to really grasp today.
I mean, just try to put yourself in their shoes. If you were born in 1905, your world was one of kings and queens, horses and buggies. By the time you were 40, you'd lived through 2 world wars, seen 74 million people die, and watched the invention of jets, TV, and the atomic bomb. That kind of violent, rapid-fire change gives you whiplash. It was a massive psychological shock to an entire generation. And the nuclear bomb? That was the final blow. Suddenly, humanity could extinguish itself. There was no safe place left on the planet, and that created a kind of fear we can't really imagine.
You know, there was this tiny window, this one brief moment where we could have put the genie back in the bottle. The US actually offered to give up its nuclear monopoly, but it wasn't meant to be. Just 3 years later, the Soviets tested their own bomb, and that hope just evaporated. The shock turned to pure terror, and that terror kicked off the most frantic arms race in history.
And this chart says it all. Look at those numbers. The world's nuclear arsenal just exploded. It went from a handful of bombs in 1946 to over 20,000 just over a decade later. The logic was simple and terrifying. If they can wipe you out, you better be able to wipe them out bigger and faster.
And this drive for bigger, badder, and scarier weapons had a champion. A man who looked at the atomic bomb, the most destructive weapon ever created, and thought to himself, you know what? This isn't nearly powerful enough. His name was Edward Teller. Teller was absolutely brilliant, a key physicist on the project that built the first atomic bomb. But while many of his colleagues were horrified by what they'd done, Teller saw things differently. For him, the only way to be truly safe was to have such overwhelming power that no one would ever dare to challenge you. And he pushed and pushed for bigger, more terrifying weapons.
And he succeeded. He gave the world the hydrogen bomb. It's a truly diabolical design. You see, an H-bomb is so ridiculously powerful, it needs a regular atomic bomb just to set it off. The X-rays from that first nuclear blast are used to crush a second core of fuel so hard that it ignites like a tiny star. It's a weapon that uses a nuke as its trigger.
But even creating a star in a can wasn't enough for Teller. He wanted to win the arms race in one move. He wanted to go straight to the end game. And that led to his ultimate vision, Project Sundial, the bomb to end all bombs. See, Sundial wasn't something you drop from a plane. It was so massive, it was designed to be a stationary backyard bomb. I mean, why bother moving it if it can destroy the whole world from where it sits? The logic was the most terrifying form of deterrence imaginable. If you attack us, we will end everything, for everyone. So, what would actually happen if this thing went off? Now, we have to be clear, a weapon this insane was never tested. Thank goodness. So what we're about to walk through is the best-guess scenario put together by experts.
It would all start with a fireball of pure energy, 50 kilometers across. If you were anywhere near it, the ball of fire would look bigger than the horizon itself.
Then, moving at the speed of light, a wave of pure heat would radiate out.
For 400 kilometers in every direction, everything flammable, trees, houses, people, would instantly burst into flame. The very ground would melt and turn to glass.
After the heat comes the blast wave. We're talking a continent-shaking magnitude 9 earthquake. The force would be so great it would literally blow a hole in the sky, punching a column of our own atmosphere straight out into space as a cloud of deadly fallout began to circle the globe.
Okay, deep breath. The good news is, Project Sundial was never built. Even within the crazy logic of the Cold War, this was seen as a step too far. Even the military thought it was a bridge too far. But, and this is a really big but, here comes the twist.
And this is the part that really gets me. Humanity looked at the idea of a single doomsday bomb and said, no, that's insane. But then, we turned around and built a doomsday machine. Instead of one big red button, we built an arsenal of over 70,000 smaller nukes and spread them all over the planet. Now, that number has come down a lot since the peak of the Cold War, but today, right now, we are still sitting on about 12,000 nuclear weapons. That is more than enough to plunge the world into a nuclear winter and end civilization as we know it.
So when you really stop and think about it, the difference between the pure madness of Project Sundial and the system we have today, it's not actually that big. We rejected the single giant monster, but we built 1,000 smaller ones instead. And maybe, just maybe, that's even more dangerous, because each individual part seems more usable.
And all of this leaves us with a final, really uncomfortable question. We've managed to dodge the bullet so far, but the machine is still running. The weapons are still there. So we have to ask ourselves, should we as a species be okay with having the power to destroy ourselves ready to go at any given moment?